Welcome to the Sustainability Nugget podcast. I am Rarasu Maraibi.
And I'm Tosin Folorunsho.
On this podcast, we learn about sustainability by discussing various related topics while focusing on three pillars: the economy, the society, and the environment.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode on the podcast. Today we'll be talking about food, meat or no meat. And I have Drew with me, Drew Arentowicz. He is the CEO and founder of 50/50 Foods, a company that was created to help meat lovers transition, or those who cannot realistically give up meat, to slowly transition to eating less meat, by providing a 50/50 burger option called Both Burger. So welcome, Drew, to the podcast.
Thank you, Tosin. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And this is your first podcast, right? How do you feel?
I feel great. I'm excited.
Awesome. So before founding 50/50 Foods, have you always been involved in the sustainability or environmental field?
Yes. So my mom was an environmental attorney and is still an environmental attorney. And she started her work in the 80s. So I was introduced to the environmental movement long before it was cool to be an environmentalist and everybody knew things about it. My mom would give my dad crap for buying a lawnmower, which was like the only thing that he truly loved to do on the weekends was ride his lawnmower around the yard.
Was it because of the gas?
Yeah, the emissions. Yeah. So before anyone knew anything about emissions, my mom was like complaining to my dad about the emissions in his lawnmower and how we shouldn't have grass and how it should just be wildflowers. And, my mom was recycling and reducing, in the 80s and the 90s. So it's been interesting kind of as almost like the child of an environmentalist now that I'm an adult, kind of watching the entire arc of where we were, where we are, and really how far we have left to go. Yeah. And so that's sort of how I have approached the 50/50 burger. It's kind of all hands on deck time. It's time we need solutions today, and waiting on everybody to become a vegetarian is, while a laudable goal, is also impossible. So really trying to meet consumers where they are, because still 95%-ish of US consumers still eat meat. Only 5 to 7% are vegan, vegetarian. And of that 95% who still eat meat, anywhere between 40 and 70%, depending on the study, say that they are interested in eating less meat. So really trying to give people an option of less meat versus, I know it's a small difference, but versus more plant. So that was really the genesis of the 50/50 burger, trying to meet in the middle, find a happy medium, and give people exactly what they say they want, which is meat, but less meat.
Right. That's awesome. I found it interesting when I met you and you talked about what you were doing. I remember the first question I had asked was, so what's the difference between your burger and another plant-based burger? And you said, no, it's actually 50/50. So for me, when I moved to the US and started grad school, one of the first things I learned was that eating less, scientists had published a study which said eating less meat would actually be better for the environment. And I wondered to myself, how do I tell my family to stop eating meat? Because culturally, meat is a staple in our food. It's not like we don't eat huge portions of it like Americans. So it's just usually like when all of our food would have one piece of meat at the top at least. And so it's like, how do I start telling people, hey, so as a Nigerian, you should stop eating meat because we need to save the environment? How do you bring up those conversations? And so that's why I really found your company very interesting. So what really inspired the creation of the 50/50 burger?
The real inspiration came, I think I had the idea 2018 was when, I think it was 2018, maybe end of 2017. I forget what exactly when this was happening, but I don't know if you remember in Brazil, there was massive fires in the Amazon rainforest.
True.
Huge conflagration in the Amazon rainforest, and they were burning it for beef production. And when Bolsonaro became president of Brazil, he basically was like not going to enforce any regulations in the Amazon rainforest, and it was just a free for all. Right. And they were burning the rainforest down to the ground, and just the images of seeing the rainforests on fire, like the lungs of the world on fire, all for beef. It really shocked me. And as beef is the most carbon intensive food that we eat by magnitudes. I mean, it's not even close. There are other carbon intensive, like lamb is carbon intensive, but in terms of volume, the volume of beef versus the volume of lamb is incomparable. So if there's one food that we can target, it's beef. And something like 14% of all global greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to agriculture, and some large chunk of that is beef. And it's not just so there was that component, and then it really hit me that Impossible and Beyond and these quote unquote plant-based burgers weren't the answer. Like I wish they were, but they're not. And not everybody's like, it's a guilt reducing. Every once in a while, I really wanted to have a product that would replace a burger, and with zero sacrifice. So part of what we led with was taste. So we put like flavor enhancing toppings like roasted mushrooms, caramelized onions, roasted garlic, riced broccoli, riced cauliflower, things that you normally associate with eating meat inside the burger, things that maybe would go on the side or on top of a burger, we put in the burger. So we really led with taste and flavor first, so that there's no sacrifice. And if you want people to change, like if you make it harder for people to change, the fewer people are going to change. You make it easier for people to change, the more people will embrace change. So we're really trying to lower the bar and make it easy for people to make a change. And so there's no sacrifice. You can feel good about still eating meat, but eating less meat. And we have real vegetables. I mean, where there's only 6 ingredients in our burger. And for, mothers, parents, fathers that want to, slip some vegetables in their kids' diets, like you've got a serving of vegetables in every patty. So, it's the environment, obviously emissions, it's the health benefits. And there's the third one, which is, I guess, a component of the environment, but it's not tied to emissions, but it's really water usage. So as we get into a world where water becomes more scarce, especially here in California and across the West in the United States, one of the biggest water consumers is for alfalfa in order to feed cattle. So if you want to save water, like this is just as a huge opportunity to still be able to have meat and eat your meat, but to be able to cut it in half would actually move the needle. Not only, I think, just back of the napkin math, if we could get half of ground beef eaters to switch to our burger, to our 50-50 burger. So if you were just to cut that ground beef in half, you could move global greenhouse gas emissions. You could decrease it by 1%. So you've got one food product that could cut global greenhouse gas emissions by 1%. So, I mean, 1%, it sounds small, but if you're talking about, just one food product, like it's incredible the impact that this product could have.
Right. So, looks like I was going to ask what's the science behind the burger, but in this case, it's more like the art behind it, because I went through your website and it says this was not lab produced, this was kitchen produced.
Yeah, well, it started in a kitchen. Literally in my kitchen, like that's where it started. And one of my partners, he's and he and I, we went to elementary school together or middle school together. He comes from a big Italian family, so he's really an incredible chef. So he and I love to cook, but I've got nothing on this guy. I mean, he's like a really talented chef. And we just kind of would mess around in the kitchen and figure out, the size of the mushrooms, the size of the caramelized onions, how big or small do we need to make, chopping up broccoli in Cuisinart.
Yeah. So do you
And try
blend
to
everything
find
together?
so we'd find the ratios, and then we'd literally like hand mash it together.
Wow.
And so that was the beginning. But obviously you're not going to be hand mashing and
right. Something you're mass producing,
at scale. So there is a lot of science. I mean, there's not only food science, but like manufacturing science that goes into doing this at scale. And what's tricky, it sounds simple, like, oh, it's half meat, half veggie. So there's kind of simple math to it, but in order to do it at scale, commercially at scale, and not have to put in any binders, any additives, any starch, anything like that, there's actually, it's really hard to do. So the number of times that we failed was high, but once that's sort of where we've got a process patent that's pending, so that we want to kind of protect the process, so that we can keep our label as clean as possible and healthful as possible for consumers, so that they're not eating, some type of weird binders and additives. And that process has been very tricky. Wow. And that's protected by trade secrets. So
got it. We'll keep the secret.
Yeah.
So do you is both burger readily available in the market right now, or are you still at the stage of R&D?
Yeah, so longer story, you can get it. We're in 5 restaurants in LA right now. Awesome. We were supposed to be launching in ShopRite on the East Coast in Q4 of 2022. We're on the 1 yard line with Gelson's. We're on the 1 yard line with Thrive Market. So we've got a bunch of opportunities that are right there in front of us. So and we're going to hopefully build our own direct to consumer. So all of this is happening this year. What happened was the USDA is a huge pain in the ass. And for people who don't fully understand how the US government works, you have the FDA, which is Food and Drug, which is what Beyond and Impossible and any vegetable product and drug product is all under the FDA. And the FDA is like a brothel. You can do whatever you want, and they'll approve a package, and it's really only until you get sued. You can lie as much as you want, and it's only until you get sued that they'll kind of come after you.
So there are no strict regulations?
No, and the FDA, there's nothing is strict, but the USDA, which is where all meat, beef, poultry, all of those products, they're like a convent. You cannot say anything that isn't 100% true. They won't approve anything. We were like, oh, it's 50% beef, 50% veggies. They're like, oh, well, you have seasoning. Like, okay, well, our seasoning is onions, garlic, red pepper, and some salt. That's all veggies. They're like, well, that's 49.98% veggies, not 50%. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So it's 50% beef, 49.98% veggie, and
so you have to decline the 0.02.
Like you're gonna that's what you're making. Like you guys are gonna do that. You're gonna make me do that. So there was kind of a couple of things that we learned with the USDA. They have very strict vegetable label claim policies, and they won't even let you say 49.97 or 98% veggies. You're not allowed to say it.
So what do you say instead?
So of course you can't Google this. It's not like you can find this. No, you have to hire super expensive lawyers that get involved with like the bowels of the USDA, people who know what the heck they're doing, and they open up old policies that nobody knows about, and obviously no one's done this before. So there are some blended products out there, but they're like 75-25. Applegate, Teton, they've got these blended beef burgers that A, don't taste very good, and B, they've got like
I've never heard of them.
Yeah, like kale and beets and lentils and things that just don't make it taste very good. They don't say what percentage of vegetables are in those products because they're not allowed to. So the only way that the USDA lets you talk about vegetables in one of two ways. One is volumetrically. So I can say I have half a cup of veggies or 2/3 of a cup of veggies per serving. But what does that mean to anybody? I don't know what that means. And I guarantee you 90+% of Americans have no idea what that means. And it's also ridiculous because cooked mushrooms have a lower volume than an uncooked mushroom. So actually an uncooked mushroom has a higher volume than cooked mushrooms, according to the USDA. When my cooked mushrooms, I've got 10 mushrooms when you cook them down.
Yeah.
It's like the density is different, but that's not like accounted for in the USDA. So but they don't care, and they don't care about us, and they don't care about you. And it's just like, that's just the rule. Okay, fine. So then the other way is you can talk about vegetables as a percent of your daily recommended vegetable intake per 2,000 calorie diet. And for us, that's 25%. Okay, that's a lot. But like when you have scarce real estate on a package, it's saying 25% of your daily recommended vegetables per 2,000 calorie diet, which they make you write out all of it.
Wow. So
yeah. Like,
so when you're writing out the ingredients, it has to be written out that way instead of just
so you got to put a paragraph on the front of your package. It's like, this is ridiculous. So we're going back and forth, and so our whole branding is 50-50. So we ended up they rejected that. I refused to take no for an answer. And so I had a friend who I knew was friends with Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. I don't know if you've heard the name Senator Cory Booker. Do you know who he is? He ran for president in 2020. He's not only a great guy, great senator, like an amazing human being in general, but he's the senator one of two senators in New Jersey, and one of our co-packers, one of our manufacturers in New Jersey. And he's on the ag committee. He's on the Senate ag committee, and he's a vegetarian and very much into the food revolution and trying to change people's diets and trying to, regenerative farming and the whole thing. So I was lucky enough through a friend to get in touch with Cory Booker. He put me in touch with his ag staff. I explained to them that these guys aren't letting me tell a consumer what it is. Like literally they're saying, sorry, you can't say what it is. And we were able to kind of work some magic, kind of a longer story of how it happened. But he got the number 2 at USDA on the phone with the number 1 at FSIS, which is the labeling department, and the head of his ag staff, and they kind of all hashed it out. And they had conflicting policies, because they're supposed to not deny a company if it's true and not misleading. If the statement is true and not misleading, that's supposed to be a go. But they also had these other conflicting vegetable label claim policies. So after that conversation, we then appealed the process. And through the appeal, they ended up allowing us as the first and only company to make a by weight veggie claim. So instead of saying, our label says 50% grass-fed beef and 50% seasoned veggies.
Seasoned veggies.
Now the 50% beef and the 50% veggies like pops on the package. Anyway, so long story short, the USDA is a huge pain in the ass, and they cost us 6 months, 9, like we couldn't sell anything in retail because we didn't have a package. They wouldn't approve anything. So that's why we were delayed last year, and why we're kind of ramping back up this year for retail. It's different for food service and restaurants. We're actually, God willing, we're really far along with, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mr. Beast and Mr. Beast Burger. He's a big YouTube star. And he's also he's really interested in getting people to eat more healthfully. And so we're talking to him about getting into, he's got like 1,700, their burger delivery. It's a burger delivery business, but it's they do a lot of volume. So
that's awesome.
We'll see. Yeah, that's coming down the pike too. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I love how you shared the story about your ordeal with the USDA and the conflicting policies that you had, because I think in general, just sometimes we see how policies may work for or against causes that we are trying to support, or even when we're implementing policies, we have to think long term, not just short-sighted policies, that like how are we actually going to implement this, and how would this not impede
Yeah.
solutions to a problem.
Yeah, there's like the law of unintended consequences. Like, oh, we
Right.
have these really strict vegetable label claim policies so that people aren't trying to manipulate. But then you get a
Right.
company like ours, we're like, we're not manipulating, because they were like, you can't even imply that it's 50-50. I'm like, it's not an implication. Like, it's a reality. Like, I dump in 1,000 pounds of beef and 1,000 pounds of veggies. Like, I'm not implying anything.
It's the salt.
That's what it actually is. Like, I can't imply it. Like, come on, get out of here.
That's interesting. Okay, so I read that you use Angus beef. That's specifically the kind of beef that you use. What makes Angus beef special? I know that you've talked about water conservation and just reducing the amount of water when it comes to rearing beef. So what makes Angus beef different, and how do you ensure that it is sourced, ethically?
Sure. So that it's kind of a longer answer. The first answer is we are beef agnostic. So what does
that mean?
It means that we can use any beef. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what beef. So for example, like we've been talking with Five Guys, and they have a beef supplier that they already use. We'll use that. We can use that beef. So it doesn't have to be Angus, doesn't have to be. So depending on the partner, we can use basically any beef. We are, for right now, it's not even that good of a story. It's basically like, that's who I was introduced to first. It's the company, our beef supplier is a company called Meyer Natural Angus. They are they have both grass-fed and non-grass fed, but they're a US based GAP certified, humanely raised. They sell a lot of beef at Whole Foods, and they're just a very high quality, just have a great reputation in the meat world. It's a little bit more expensive beef, but for our retail beef, we just chose grass-fed Angus from Meyer Natural because we know that they've got an incredible reputation, and also they can support the volume. Because there's another company that we're considering partnering with, Cook's Venture, which is a direct-to-consumer, but like super high-end regenerative beef, like grass-fed, regenerative farmed beef. And they get their beef from New Zealand. So there's not a lot of like regenerative, like organic, regenerative farmed, grass-fed, US beef that just doesn't exist. So in terms of like volume, since this is a volume business, we tried to find a beef supplier that it had both the respect of GAP certified, works with Whole Foods, but also has enough supply that if we were to get Costco or Whole Foods or something like that we could fulfill that order, as opposed to random regenerative farms in New Zealand, sorry, we don't have enough beef, so that that's the reason. And Angus is mostly a marketing thing, is the truth. Maybe you I'm not a farmer, so I can't
I'm not either.
to the types of cows, but from sort of my armchair research, it is a specific type of cow, and I'm sure there are good Angus and not as good Angus, but it's really a marketing thing on some level. But I do also think that it's almost like a quality control that Angus is just known to be a really good type of cow. So but it's half marketing.
Okay, awesome. So you definitely have suppliers for your beef, and that brings me to my next question, which would be just in terms of general operations and productions, how do you ensure that the company operates on lesser carbon footprint?
So just cutting meat in half is that's a huge chunk already. That's the big step. In terms of production, there's not a lot of energy inputs. We basically, our mixing process happens relatively quickly, so it's not like you're putting it's not like you're using a ton of energy to mix the beef and the veggies. So it's a very low carbon intensive process in general. I think personally, my biggest issue with just the consumer product industry in general is packaging. So I would really like to be able to get to a point where our packaging has a low footprint, and whether that's, recycled plastics or, but with our product's a little bit more moist because vegetables have more water. So it's not like we could put it in a paper package. Like it's just our product is just a little bit more moist because we got veggies in it. Like that's just a fact. So my long-term goal is to really try and get our packaging buttoned up. But unfortunately, like everything, the cheapest way to do something is the worst way to do it. But in a business that's a commodity business and a margin business, I can't have a $2 package because nobody's going to buy an $18 per pound product. Like it's just like
no one would pay for the package.
No one's going to pay for it, and that's just that just sucks. That's just part of capitalism, and I honestly think that's why the government really needs to come in and start either helping us cut down on those costs and subsidizing it until enough packaging gets produced, enough sustainable packaging gets produced that brings the cost down because of scale. But a company like ours, we just can't afford it. You'd be out of business. So it's like you got to kind of pick your poison. And I hope if we do have any market power as we grow, that's going to be a really big focus of ours, is how do we really lower that footprint in terms of waste.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. Packaging is just, with consumer products in general, packaging seems to remain one of the biggest issues.
It drives me bananas. The amount of trash, amount of trash that we produce. And honestly, like, I would love to see I'd love to see a law. Now, it would kill me. So let's say that this law only applied to the big guys, the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, the Procter and Gamble's, like if there was a way to have them internalize the externalities. So it's like, if I feel this as a producer, I feel responsible for the package that I produce. I don't feel like, oh, just throw it away, screw it, whatever. No, I actually feel personally responsible for what I produce. And I would like to think that some of these other large consumer product companies would feel personally responsible for the trash that they produce. And like, you made it, so you should own it. The full cycle you should own.
Shouldn't be on the consumer too.
Yeah, it shouldn't just be like, oh, we'll just throw it away. Like, well, where's away? Like, you don't just throw it away. Away is like somebody's backyard is the ocean. Like you don't just throw it away. It goes somewhere. So I really wish either there was some, we talk about personal responsibility. I wish these companies felt personally responsible to, take care of the trash that they are producing. Or if they're not going to feel personally responsible, then I wish the government would come in and, if the carrot doesn't work, use the stick and force the industry to, because it's not like we can't. This isn't something that's like, oh, an unsolvable problem. Right. We definitely can. And maybe the government needs to come in and subsidize and help these companies, so that, because they'll just pass the costs on to consumers, which I understand consumers don't want to pay more. I get it. I'm a capitalist, so I get it. But like, we need to work together in order to solve these problems, because there's just so much trash. And the packaging world is just it's awful.
It's the major one. Yeah.
I hate it. Yeah. And as a part of it, I don't like it. And I want to be a part of the solution. And I don't know how to do that just yet, but that's on our to-do list.
Working on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are your plans for, well, you've touched on this a little bit while in the conversation, but what are your plans for growth for the company after you
Yeah, after
pushed
the
through with
USDA, yeah,
USDA.
like literally that just happened. That happened like weeks
Yeah.
ago. So like
That's
it's
awesome.
like we're back in business.
Congratulations.
You know what I mean? Like finally the government allows us to move forward. Yeah, yeah, I mean you as a lifelong progressive, like once you're dealing with the government, like I'm turning into a raging libertarian. I'll tell you what, like it's it's very, very complex trying to get around regulations, but I understand why they're there. But so now that we have our retail package that's been approved, you know, you can only do, you only can, you're limited by the resources that you have available to you, you know.
Sure.
So if this were a division of Nestle or Tyson or some bigger company and I had a $5 million budget, the answer would be X. But since I am not and don't have a $5 million budget, the answer is closer to Y. So it's really kind of working with, you know, it's if Thrive happens, if ShopRite happens, if Gelson's happens, you know, if all three were to happen, that kind of changes the math. We'd probably have to raise a little bit more money. Direct to consumer is its own thing because you need to, in our world, you can't just, you don't produce 100 pounds or 200 pounds here and there. Like the smallest run I can do is 2,000 pounds, which is, so like every single time that I have to try to do something like R&D, 2,000 pounds of product is, call it, you know, 8 to 10,000 pounds or $8 to $10,000. That if it doesn't work, you know, we have a we have a partner where when for our R&D projects that don't work, instead of like throwing food away, we have a partner where we donate it to they're like a commissary for food insecure people in New York City. So
that's awesome.
So we it's not like it goes to waste, but our business operates at scale. So even if we were to do direct to consumer, even if we were to get Gelson's, like we're going to need to spend several $100,000 in inventory just to produce and package. And then it's like, okay, well then you got to distribute it and get it in it, you know. And so it's the answer is whoever says yes first / can we get our direct to consumer up and running as quickly as possible. But that's also, as I'm sure you can appreciate, like Amazon has just crushed everybody's expectations on shipping. So it's like, oh, free shipping. But if you're shipping frozen beef products, you know, you've got
that's extra costs,
installation and a box and dry ice, and you need to get it there and you know, overnight it, you know. It's prohibitively expensive, or has been, and it's starting to come down a little bit, but you know, it's hard to ask people to pay $20 for shipping every time they buy something. So we're really just trying to, you know, whatever happens first is the answer. Like whatever company sends the PO first is what we're going to do as we kind of get our direct to consumer up and running. And that's just, you know, it's, you know, you don't, beggars aren't choosers as a startup. You know, I wish Whole Foods would just call me and be like, we're going national. And I wish I could call, you know, Bill Gates and be like, hey, you know, I need $10 million. Let's go. Like, wouldn't that be nice if the world was that easy? But it's not. And I look at starting a business and getting, like, there's so many barriers to entry in this business. The meat business is such an old school, like nobody thinks about innovation. Like it's just the way that we've done it for hundreds of years. Nobody, like even like the meat buyers are old school dudes. You know, this is just such an old school business that getting anybody to do anything different is like pushing a freaking rock up a mountain. So I really, the way that I feel and the way that I look at it is like, it's like rock climbing. Like every single flake is just like, get me 3 feet further up the mountain, you know, whoops, you almost fall and kill yourself. Like get me 3 feet up the mountain, and you're just climbing until you reach a plateau and you're like, oh, great, we made it. And then it's like, you look up again and you're like, oh no, you still got a long way to go. So we'll see.
Yeah, I love how you're actually honest with this stage that you were in the process and the challenges of, running a startup. But I definitely
Yeah.
hope that, as you said, you reach, I hope that you reach that plateau soon, before the next big.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Before I go out of business. Yeah, me too.
Right, right.
No, there- as a startup, it's interesting because there's you hear this a lot. Oh, 95% of all startups fail. Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't start a business because 95% of, so like you hear that all the time. And I'm like, well, why? Why do they fail? And they fail because they run out of money. Like there's only one reason why I would bet if of those 95% of companies that fail, if they had enough runway, like enough gas in the tank, think of it like flying an airplane, like you burn the most gas at takeoff. And if most small business or most startups had enough gas in the tank to take off, I'll bet you at least half of them would have succeeded.
Right, true.
So it's like the answer to all your questions is money. it's money. And you've got people like in Silicon Valley who are like, oh, well, I like, tech. Everybody wants tech. I'm a tech this, I'm a tech that, a food tech this. Like, what about old school businesses, man? Like, oh, well, we only invest in tech. Like, what?
Yeah.
So the only solution in the world today is technology? Like, so you've got all these guys that are like, let's put billions of dollars into Impossible and Beyond because, ooh, they've got all this cool tech and people are going to eat this cool tech. And then they're like, okay, but it costs you $1.82 for every dollar of sales. What kind of business is that? Like you have a business that just loses money. Oh, well, we'll get to scale. Oh yeah. What happens if you don't? And so you got all these big Silicon Valley venture capitalists are pouring billions of dollars into a company that all they do is lose money. And now that it's lost money, I'm sure they all pulled their money out 2 years ago, but like stock price of Beyond is down 80%. Now all these same guys are like, oh, let's go into cultured meat, lab synthesized meat. It's like, have you asked any consumers if they want to eat that yet? Like, do you think people want that? But no, here's billions of dollars. And like, here we are sitting here like, hey, we could use $500,000. We could use $1 million. Like these guys are getting billions and we need 1 million and we'd have a way bigger impact. And we could do it today versus waiting 10 years for cultured meat. But like, oh, we don't have cool technology. So we're not, we're like the bastard of VCs. Like, oh, you're not cool enough for our money. I'm like, but we could have a huge impact and people really like the product. So what's the problem?
I think it comes down to what I think I saw a post on Instagram yesterday about tech-driven solutions for climate change and how there's now this obsession that, oh, well, technology is going to save us, but how about thinking, as you mentioned, about regenerative agriculture or really learning how the earth has been able to sustain itself and really learning those processes and bringing it back. How about, I mean, I am a tech fan. I do support like new innovations and things.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, but there's just, should I say the boundaries or still scaling back sometimes to look and learn if this tech-driven solution is actually a solution or could also have its own externalities. And I've tried Impossible Burger and I think Beyond Burger.
Yeah.
Usually, because so for me it's I don't have like meatless Mondays. There are just times when I get tired of meat and okay, so I want to do plant-based options and I'm still able to, I would want to season the food to make sure it's like it suits my taste.
Yeah.
But then like for me, I'm open to any kind of innovation when it comes to either both 50-50 meat or having meat and vegetables or having plant-based burger in quotes.
Yeah.
So I think it's just giving as you mentioned, opportunities for consumers to be able to not have to choose between this or that, or make people at the midpoint also.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I appreciate you saying that because in terms of just the ethos of what we're trying to do, I I personally, I'm very proud of that ethos where like we live in a world of extremes, and especially in this country where it's like just the hyper ideological
You're
extremism
either this or
that.
that.
Yeah. And like, oh God, like I'm just over it. And the fact that it's a little bit like the middle way in Buddhism, like moderation is really the answer, and that we can meet in the middle and, you know, find a happy medium. That this is, I just appreciate the ethos of what we're trying to do too. It's, we don't have to live in a world of extremes. We can live in a world of moderation, and that alone can solve a lot of the same problems.
Awesome. Do you have are there any other exciting personal projects? So apart from like the challenges that we've mentioned, is there anything exciting in the 50/50 foods world currently? Or just like any final thoughts for people out there?
Yeah, I think I mean, for us personally, I mean, we kind of ran through everything. Like we're just grinding, trying to, you know, it's all about sales. You know, it's like, how do we get more sales? How do we get more relationships? I think I would say to consumers that it's really, it reminds me of I forget the quote, but one of the founding fathers talked about how for our democracy that the people are king, that we don't have a monarchy, the people are king. And I feel the same way about consumers. Like consumers are king, and they have so much power, and consumers have so much power to drive what companies produce. And for a company like ours, like just being open to trying it. You know, I'll give you an example, like because there's a little bit more, because we have vegetables, they're cooked vegetables already. So, but when we mix them together, they're frozen. So like when you cook it, our product is a little bit, it's wetter, it's moist.
Yeah.
Now it burns off, but it cooks a little bit different than a regular burger, just a little bit. You know, there's still oil in a regular burger. It's not gonna put it in the pan or the regular burger, but it's going to perform a little bit differently. I would say to consumers, like when you have new products and you're trying to make change, that like instead of going straight to, you know, Google reviews and, oh, this sucks, or oh, I hate this, I hate that, like it didn't work this way, I didn't perform the way that I wanted it to, like to have some grace, to have a little bit of like just a little, just work with producers like us when something's not perfect. For companies that are really trying to make a difference, it's hard. Perfection's hard to hit. So like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? Like, so it's like consumers have a lot of power, and to have some patience with the companies, whether it's like, oh, it doesn't taste perfect. Like actually our taste is great, but I've got friends who are doing like, you know, seaweed burgers. You know, just have a little bit of patience with all of us as we try to make change. You know what I mean? That if it's not perfect, like just have some patience. Like don't go and try to take them down. Like we're trying to do our best, and just to have a little patience with companies that are trying to you know, move the needle. I think that's
yeah, I was going to say that bringing up reviews reminds me of the fact that I tend to not post reviews online, but reviews do sway my purchase decisions, especially in places like Amazon, where the first thing I do when I remember, I go through I check how many people have given reviews or bought the product. So if it's like 14 reviews or 14 people, I'm like, no, I doubt. I doubt this. But then I have to see like the higher number of purchase and reviews. And then if for whatever reason, it's like 3.5 stars or like 4.5 stars, I'm like, no, maybe not.
I do think reviews are important, obviously. Like they're very important.
But as you said, I think it's there are times when you could, based on like your personal values and your beliefs, you could try out something for the first time and then decide. Especially with consumer products, not like especially I mean like consumables, things that we're eating, not electronics or those kind of things. For example, you would like it or you not like it, or it could be an acquired taste too. There's some certain foods that I tried first time and I did not like. But then I probably had, when I tried and decided to give it a try again, and I tweaked it in my own personal way, and then it worked for me. So
the irony of caviar, right? Like the most expensive food in the world, people are like, oh, it's terrible.
Right. But well, it was nice talking to you.
Absolutely, Tosin. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed this, so thank you.
Thank you, and I look forward to seeing 50/50 burger in stores around the
thank
US.
you. I'll let you know as soon as you can get it in Gelson's. I'll let you know.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great Saturday. Take care.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Sustainability Nuggets podcast. I am Rarusu Maribi.
And I am Tosin Folarunshaw. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a rating and review on wherever you listen to your podcast.
You can also show your support by signing up for a small donation to help sustain future episodes. You can find all relevant links in the description. See you in our next episode.